Well. It's been over a year. Actually, it's more than a year. It's been more than a year. Has it been a year? But I finally got around to it. I finally got my life in order and finally got to a point where I can give you what you've been asking for. The epilogue to Prisoners of Garzara. Now, one I'm going to go ahead and preference that, as you can see, I've always had trouble pronouncing the word Garzara. Now, I came up with the name, and for some reason, I put a name that, with my nostrils, has one of the worst pronunciations ever. But you guys are probably wondering, well, where did it go? You didn't finish it. I decided to cut it from the D&D podcast because there was a lot of problems with recording these episodes. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and act like I hated doing it. I loved the campaign itself. I had a story that I wanted to get out there, and I feel to a certain degree I did. But my players were not really there for the D&D podcast world. And, I mean, you can't force someone to be a part of something, even if they're participating. So, I decided to axe the podcast part and just finish out the campaign, which we did. And I will say that I'm glad. I'm thankful I did that because I already had a big trouble of going through the 3-hour, 4-hour sessions and then cutting out all the profane language that's not allowed on YouTube or Podbean or wherever you get this podcast at. And honestly, we got worse from there. So without further ado, I'm going to explain the epilogue of Prisoners of Garzara. So last time on Prisoner of Garzara, we were in Spiderville, and Jeff had saw that everything was on fire after I think they tried running a wrestling event. That was the last 2 years ago, probably by now, episode. From there, Jeff was able to tidy up the town. They kind of all reconciled and talked to Billy a little bit about Jeff asking them to get his father not to hate him as much. And Billy and Jeff and the adventurers themselves had a big old meeting, and Jeff expressed that he had a big heart, and his heart was going to keep growing for his father, even if he didn't like him. And upon hearing this news, Billy, his father, said, "Wait a second, you have a big heart?" And he reached into Jeff's chest, ever so slightly, and pulled it out. This caused Jeff to go into a dying state on the ground, and Billy revealed himself to not actually be Jeff's father, Billy, but one of the Organization 13 members. Yes, I made an Organization 13, just like Kingdom Hearts, because I'm unoriginal. But with that, he disappeared, and I can't remember which number he was. I want to say he was number 4, but to be honest, what happened to the Organization 13, it doesn't matter what number he is, because like I said, our adventurers did not care about the D&D aspect of a D&D podcast, or the podcast aspect. And mostly all the shit after that went to hell. Now Amp, in her tons of wisdom and great min-maxing of his character, Dongle, was able to pull some bullshit and fabricate a false heart to replace Jeff's heart. D&D mechanics and a bunch of rolls later, that Dongle just seemed like he could not fail. I gave up. Jeff was revived. I could not kill this man for this climactic thing. And Jeff was left with the shallow, hollow feeling that his dad wasn't real and has been dead for multiple times. So, we moved on from there. The adventurers headed back to Dust Branch Village, and upon returning, they talked to Roger, who sent them on a quest to gain materials. One of the adventurers wanted to build a Flail of Tiamat. Now, for people who know, Flail of Tiamat is a broken weapon. But I said, why not? This is the way I said you can get weapons, is by doing quests and killing monsters. Why not? Let's do it. Well, an abyssal demon was attacking the village to the west, which was Daggerford, if I remember correctly. Now, before heading off old Ricky had a couple words with the adventuring group, and they found out a little bit of old Ricky's past. One thing they also found out, and something that, again, I'm glad this podcast was immediately taken down, because there was no way to preference this. I kind of just started shooting from the hip. I stopped being able to really focus because everything was going to shit every time I planned something. So, going with the flow, I told them that Ricky actually had a cursed penis. And the reason Ricky seemed like he was so sexually provocative is because he had a penis that was cursed, called the penis of wanting. Now, for some of you, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a not safe for work warning about what I'm saying, but basically Ricky's penis, you would want to have sex with Ricky after he got inside you. Now, I know what that sounds like. That sounds like a date rape penis. And to be honest, I'd already given up on this campaign from there, so why not? So the adventurers convinced Ricky to go with them to Daggerford and fight the Abyssal Demon, which is what I thought they were going to do. Instead, they all rode on their griffin high above the Abyssal Demon, and basically, Potman, Andy, jumped off the side holding Ricky, caught the side of the Abyssal Demon, and threw Ricky. Now, mind you, I gave them a ton of athletic rolls, but threw Ricky to the Abyssal Demon's butthole, where his penis was inserted, and the demon gave up the fight. Disappearing, the demon left behind one of his tentacles that they used to basically, give him the flow of Tiamat. Now, the thing is, I gave them a little bit of a tidbit because I was still trying to do something with this story, and told them that one of the tentacles that was left there seemed to be having an effect around the villagers around it. One of them had a perception check from the griffin and got a nat 20. I remember this exactly because I explained it, that it seemed like something was crawling out of the tentacle itself and infecting the villagers, and the villagers were starting to act weird. Well, they ignored that. It wasn't part of their, what they wanted to do, so it was over. They went back and Flavel Tiamat was made. Ricky had contracted some type of STD from the Abyssal Demon, and everybody was happy. Until they got word of another ring of fire being basically bent around over near Fandarius's whole castle. So, heading off to Fandarius's castle, they found that Fandarius was actually not there. He was trapped inside a bottle because he had been playing with the deck of many things and got his soul trapped. Telling him that it was a false alarm, but there was something north in Waterdeep is where they need to go, is what Fandarius is, one of his cronies told the adventuring group. Heading to Waterdeep, there was 2 large towers, and the party immediately took note of it. They landed on the outskirts of town because they wanted to kind of get a feel for everything going on. And at Waterdeep, they forgot about a mechanic that I put in, that if they did not explicitly say they brought Rowan along, Rowan would be bound to them and brought via a meteor. Now, this was never brought to fruition of why this happened, because I was supposed to do a side adventure with Rowan and have her cursed, but time constraints became a thing. And while they were outside one of these large towers, Rowan appeared in the sky and bisected one of the towers, causing it to crash and make a large explosion, killing tons of people. They, going inside the other tower, said that's probably going to become an issue. I was going to do something with the Crips and Bloods, but basically they became one people, because the person that ran the other tower was arch rival, but secretly partner of the person who ran the tower that fell. So all the adventurers got put on a wanted list. They all ran and hid, and Satch was ceremoniously captured and taken inside the auction house. While waiting in disguise, trying to get inside the auction house because they found out that's where Satch went, they ran into old Ricky outside. And after a little bit of pleasantry, they wondered why Ricky was there, and he said, "I'm just going inside the auction house like everybody else." Inside the auction house, Satch ran into old Ricky too, who was also dressed as a guard. And something started to seem weird with this. Wanted criminals inside Waterdeep, not knowing what was going on with Old Ricky starting to pop up everywhere. They all escaped on their griffin after fighting their way into the auction house and out a skylight roof after rescuing Satch. It's kind of a clusterfuck. From there, they started heading north, or from there they started heading south, thinking that there's something they need to go check, noticing that the towns below them had slowly started to change. Old Ricky had started popping up everywhere. Old Ricky had started becoming everybody. In the midst of all this, they ran into the Organization 13 again. And believe it or not, they actually all convened with Garzara. Or, how do I say this? They got into Garzara's realm. Organization 13 opened up a portal to get in there to try bringing Garzara to them. And through some hijinks and some really good rolls on the Adventurer Parting's part, they all got flung into that realm. And lo and behold, Garzara wasn't there. In fact, it was a different god, Splatinko, who is the god of jesting, jesters, and all that. And I'm not going to lie, this fight that was supposed to be built up was kind of on its head already. I was running with it, and everything was kind of falling apart. After a couple coin flips, literally, Splatinko threw a coin and it landed completely face up. And basically it was a party versus party of knocking the coin over on the opposing side. The coin was large enough to smash all of the Organization 13s, killing them instantly, getting rid of them. Splatinko had now gained more favor with the party and started offering them stuff. Tiamat had started communing with Andy. And everything was starting to shape up. Garzara had told them that Ricky has infected the world. And what they didn't understand what that meant. So heading back to Dust Branch, they found out that Ricky had started appearing all over town. And people were being infected and turned it into old Ricky. And everything started to fall in line when the old Rickies became in high mind. Now that abyssal tentacle that infected those villagers was infected with old Ricky and started turning people into him. Ricky, becoming the high mind he was, moved up to the north, moved way up north, made a castle north of Waterdeep, and slowly started building a shrine, a fortress. Everybody had found out that old Ricky... Everybody in the party had agreed that they needed to stop Ricky because Ricky was taking over the world, but they didn't feel anger towards Ricky. They understood because Ricky had talked to them through the hive mind people, telling them that he wants revenge for what Garzara did to his family, did to his mind, did to his life. It's kind of crazy to think that Ricky was the final person they all were going to go against. And I would wish I could say that there was a grand infiltration that was amazing and I tried pulling every bit of DM bullshit I could, but it all failed. Unfortunately, this party was too stacked. I couldn't handle it. I made a 3-wall system, but they were all able to get inside their hat that was basically acted like a hat of or a bag of holding, without the part of they can only be in the bag for 15 minutes. Going that, they used Ethereal Shift and an NPC's character was able to shift and sneak inside the walls, able to fade through everything. A lot of chase sequences later, they were at the main cathedral where Ricky was. Jumping up, running up the side of it, the top of it got pulled open. And they saw Ricky, old Ricky, the original one, sitting in a circle. And as they entered that circle, it was almost like they have changed into a different realm. Now from there, I had a choice. As a DM, I'll tell you, I could have them fight a god like Ricky, but that's not what Ricky would have wanted. After a chat with Ricky, it turned out that they talked him out of it. They understood why they wanted Garzara dead. And Ricky didn't hold them back. He said, there's a circle right here. I was going to summon him. And I was going to defeat him. I was going to take his power, not to rule this world, just to get rid of him. Now, I did try setting something up in the background. And unfortunately, the Avengers thwarted me again. I contacted each one of them on a personal line, completely outside the session, as posing as a different god. For Andy, I had Tiamat. For Satch, I had Splatinko. NPC, Stumbo, was approached by Splatinko, of course. Splatinko told him that he was going to take over the body of Satch and to put in this so he could be summoned and do that. Amp was approached by Garzara, who he promptly told Garzara to fuck off. But Garzara put it on the table. And then Garzara approached all of them and said, all you guys need to do is do this to stop me. Basically, each one of them was given a gemstone, a sapphire, a topaz, an emerald, a ruby. And depending on which one got put in the circle at one point, was the one that was going to summon them so they could, get rid of them. That's what I thought would happen. I thought turning all these guys on each other was the move. But lo and behold, I fell for it. That's not the move. In fact, when they had their moment to put everything on the circle, they all kind of went silent for a second. It was odd. The whole time that these guys have been arguing with each other, fighting with each other, calling each other the N-word and all that stuff, it seems like they were all on the same page. And they threw every single one of the gemstones in there, which summoned every single one of the gods, including the false god, Splatinko with the fake one. And they used it to destroy all the gods. Sure, it got rid of Ricky's power, but it also destroyed the realm's gods. And I think Amp's exact words was, this shithole place probably did fine without your help, and it'll do fine without you afterwards. I think Amp's exact words were, this place only suffers every time you interfere. And I'm pretty sure it'll do pretty fucking well without you guys here. And that was it. Ricky was no more a god. Completely, separated. And every one of his people turned back. Everybody turned back to the regular self. All the gods were defeated. And my question to them was, did they want to go back to the world? And Garzara said that to them. You're not going to be able to get back to your place. Well, it stopped being about that. They didn't want to go back. They're all criminals. Why would they? So each one of them took residence inside their own portion of Faerun. And they all just lived their lives from there. That's basically the end of Prisoner of Garzara. Now, would I say that I'm happy with this outcome? As a DM, you got to ask yourself, what's the ending that you want? Do you want the ending where everything is wrapped up in a neat bow? Or do you want the ending where your players got to have their freedom of choice? Part of me can say that I'm glad I finished the campaign. And I'm glad I let them have their free reign of choice. But man, it was quite the struggle. So, I will say I'm sorry to everyone that I stopped making the podcast that listened to this regularly and enjoyed it. I know there's a variety of D&D podcasts out there nowadays, and there's tons of stuff to listen to. And if mine was enjoyable, then I appreciate you for giving me your view. Give me your listen, give me your download, whatever you did. I wasn't in this for the money. I did it as a hobby. And honestly, I will say that I still make content. I'm more focused on video content now, and haven't done much D&D stuff lately. I'm running a Call of Cthulhu campaign, but just for me. Not to make content, not to do anything like that. And who knows, in the future I might do something like that. So, with all that said, thank you guys for listening to Prisoners of Garzara. And I, your host DM Taco King, have appreciated your audience. See you later.